Welcome, everyone. My name is Lisa Foster. I'm Senior Advisor of the Bay Area Global Health Alliance, standing in for Sarah Anderson, our Executive Director, who is out on a well-deserved vacation for the moment. I know she was really disappointed not to be able to join this call, but I think what makes me so excited is that this is, I believe, the second of our communications directors meetings. These meetings were born out of feedback from many of you, our members, indicating you were interested in finding ways to connect with your colleagues across organizations of the Alliance membership. And so what makes me so happy is that I've worked with Sarah Francis and Drew Bernard for many years now. It's my privilege and pleasure to introduce them today to talk to us about the use of social media for research specifically. Both of them, both Sarah and Drew, have years, if not decades, of experience working with civil society and the social sector and how to leverage tools of social platforms for a whole range of activities, research being one of them. And we met years ago and I was at Facebook and they were working at Facebook and were embedded with the Facebook Health Partnerships team to support a number of nonprofits specifically in how to use the Facebook platform and tools to support health messaging. I think we've shared Sarah's bio with you before in the emails that we've sent around, so I won't do that. But maybe without further ado, Sarah, let me hand that to you to do any further intros of you and Drew. In terms of quick housekeeping, please, I think the presentation will be fascinating, and I hope there are a number of questions which you can ask directly or put them in chat. We'll be monitoring chat. And otherwise, I think, Sarah, that's it. I'll hand it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lisa. And for everyone that's joined, I unfortunately am not on video. I was taking care of my two little nieces last week. And as you do with 2-year-olds, I picked up a little bit of a cold. So I am staying off video. But I am really excited to be here. And I gave this presentation to a UC network that Nadia Diamond-Smith had pulled together from UCSF. So if you participated in the presentation that I gave around social media and research in March, feel free to drop off this call. Or if you weren't able to join the call then, stick around because it's the same presentation and I'm sure that you'll be able to learn a lot. And also please note that we'll be packaging up this presentation. It has a lot of links and resources in it as a PDF. So you don't have to take copious notes. You can rest and we will send it out. And I want to take a moment to introduce my colleague, Drew Bernard at Upswell. Drew, he'll be joining me for this presentation. Drew, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and also provide some context about this really, it's kind of a very tactical presentation about using social media for research. So I think that overview would be really helpful.
That sounds great. Yeah, so hi, everyone. I'm Drew. I am one of the other members of the Upswell team. Lisa's done a quick intro of kind of who we are. I won't spend too much time talking about myself or the work that Sarah and I do, other than to say from a context standpoint, as Sarah said, this deck, we do lots and lots of trainings and lots of presentations and work with a lot of organizations. And this is one of the more tactical decks that I've seen us do. And I say that because Sarah put this together and it's awesome. But I think it's really important to think a little bit about from a context standpoint, why this stuff is so important and why we are putting so much effort and energy into the research side of things. And there's really sort of two sides to the coin for us when we think about this research work that we're going to be presenting today and these very tactical approaches to using social for research. One is for insight generation. So we've supported, I'm not going to lie, thousands of organizations or thousands of campaigns, hundreds of organizations, thousands of campaigns all around the world over the years. And over and over and over and over, we've seen that being able to come into a campaign, into a project, or even a program with the right type of insights about the audience, about the behavior, about the thing you're trying to do, has an incredibly powerful impact on the actual performance and outcome and impact of the work that you're doing. So one piece of this research is just insight generation. How do we understand the audience that we're trying to reach, we're trying to move, we're trying to get to do something? And then the other side is, how do we know if it works, right? So the other side is the M&E, right? So there's insight generation and there's M&E. Both of those are critically important to the work that we all do. And generally speaking, are totally outside of the realm of possibility because of cost and time. Whether, if you're working in a place where you're dealing with a very time delimited issue, you don't have time to roll out a huge multi-month research project. And the other side of that coin is that if you're working on a project and you have a relatively small budget, you also can't spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to do the types of market research that you would, of course, want to do. And so the context of this really is kind of, think of it in those terms. That's how we think about it. That's how we use this all the time. One is from an insight generation, and the other is an M&E piece. I'm going to hand it back over to Sarah. I'll jump in at like one little bit during this to talk a little bit about some of the stuff we're doing on this front ourselves. But hopefully that's helpful. And then last thing I'll say, and I know Sarah said this as well. Use comments, the comment section, to ask questions. Sarah and I are we're very conversational. We're West Coasters, we're very casual. So feel free to jump in with questions in the thread, and Sarah may answer them right away. She may jump in and answer it, or we might hold them to the end. We should have plenty of time at the end of the presentation for questions. So I'll stop there, Sarah, and hand it back to you.
Awesome, thanks, Drew. And the only other thing I would add to context about this is that the social media usage has really reached a tipping point in many countries where the majority of people over the age of 18 also have an account and are active users on one or more social media network. And if you are working in a country or people in your organization are working in a country that has a high level of social media penetration, this is when you can use social media for research, and it's so effective. And this is where comms can play a huge role in research and can really inform in a rapid, affordable way the program staff of your organization. So with that said, let me give you a quick overview of what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to go through the main types of research you can do with social, and the different ways it looks on different platforms. Then we're going to talk really tactically about how you use social for survey recruitment, a general process overview. And we're going to talk about, Facebook ads in detail, because Facebook is globally still the biggest player in the social networks and works very well for this. So we're going to do a technical ads deep dive on using social for research, and then we'll have plenty of times for robust conversation and discussion. So feel free again to put any questions at any time in the chat, or you can save your questions for the end. So I'm just gonna get some stuff out of the way. All right, so the main types of research that you can do on social is, the first is audience research and what's called social listening. So I just broke down on this eye chart screen for you all the different channels and the tools available and what you can learn. So Facebook is the big one to use. You can use it. You can do the types of things you can do for research on Facebook is you can just do a general search. For me, that's if I'm working in a country, if I'm starting a campaign, just searching to see what types of posts people are posting around the comments that are public. That's a great thing to do. You can also use audience insights. Audience insights is a tool that's available in what's called Meta Business Tools or Meta Business Suite. And it's amazing. It's free for everyone. You don't have to pay for any ads. You just have to have a Business Suite account. You can just sign up at business.facebook.com and be able to see how many people are in your target area On Facebook, you can search by demographics. You can also look at pages to watch, and you'll be able to see the top content on some key pages. On Instagram, I highly recommend doing a hashtag search in the areas that you're working on, seeing what the conversations and images and top posts are. On WhatsApp, because it is encrypted and private, the only thing that you can do is there are some third-party tools where you can do a group search. So you can kind of see what big groups, but for WhatsApp, I think the best way to do research on WhatsApp is to talk to your target audience and interview them. So if you have a program staff that's doing some in-person surveys or exit interviews, asking them what WhatsApp groups they are a part of. For Twitter, you can use the Explore tab, you can use some third-party tools, and then you can also, without paying for anything, use the Twitter ad tool to learn audience size and who's on Twitter and filter by demographics, just in the same way you can do on Facebook. For LinkedIn, same situation. They have an ads tool, but you don't have to pay for anything to do the research. But you can also do some really heavy lifting on searching. And LinkedIn is growing, and it depends. I think using LinkedIn for like policy advocacy is really interesting, and it's just beginning. It's kind of like the Wild West. It's like Facebook a decade and a half ago. So I would definitely explore that. And YouTube, again, you can use the search tool. You can also use some third-party tools. And here's the audience insights tool that I highlighted on Meta. So this is inside of Meta, the business suite, and this is audience insights. It's the little tab over here that looks like messages. And you can see when you click on audiences, you can then search your potential audience. And then you have all these demographic filters, and you can really hone into your target audience and see the monthly active user size. And something I love to recommend, you can do this both on Instagram and on Facebook. It looks very similar. So you're in the Insights tab inside of Meta Business Suite. You can follow pages to watch. You can follow Facebook pages or Instagram pages. I highly recommend following what I think of as an opposition or other players in your space. So Drew and I were working with a network that was moving forward breastfeeding globally. And what we had a lot of organizations do is follow the big formula companies here, right? The formula companies will never know that you're following them. It's kind of like your secret spyglass, and you get to see what are the top posts and how active these pages are. So you can learn from your competition, and you can learn what's working and also what messages are starting to spread, which can really inform. And Drew and Lisa, I can't see the chat, so if you would interrupt me, that would be awesome.
Sure, Sarah, I just wanted to confirm that all these tools are free. So, right?
Yes.
Yes. Great.
Yes, and you don't have to pay for anything. And all of the research tools that I listed on that first tab, as long as it's not a third-party tool, like what's available for doing some WhatsApp group searches, they're all free. You have to sign up for an account, but you don't have to pay any advertising tools. And this is what it looks like to follow a formula company here. You can see, you can click in to see the top post, and you can see how active they are. So that's kind of the overall like big picture research when you're doing some general research around a topic, or you want to understand audience size and social media penetration in a key area. The second type of research that you can do on Facebook and Instagram is a brand lift tool. This is available to if you are a large enough advertiser or have direct contacts inside of the Meta organization. But again, you have to sign up for a a Facebook Business Suite account or a Meta Business Suite account. And a brand lift, and I'm sure some of you know about the brand lift and some of you don't, but basically a brand lift is a test and control measurement that relies on experimental design that is all done for you. It's almost like the easy bake oven, right? You can set it and forget it. You don't have to do any of the controls. It's a great way to see how your communications on Facebook that you've designed can impact an audience. So you have a test group and a control group. Facebook ads are shown to your test group. And this is for Facebook and Instagram, so they can be delivered to your test group on Facebook and Instagram. Your control group does not see the content. And then a poll is delivered inside of Facebook and Instagram. You can see the example right there, what it looks like when it pops up. And then the brand lift tool analyzes the lift or the difference between the control and the treatment. It was originally designed for brand advertisers to see how well their, ads make you want to buy Coca-Cola. So you can see the lift between the control and the treatment. And you can write some custom questions in the, but they're really designed, I mean, you can kind of tweak them a little bit, but in the Facebook Business Suite tool, they're pretty much set. So they're really, brand focused questions. So a few key points to keep in mind when you're thinking about if you're going to choose to do a brand lift poll is that the brand lift study results are aggregated and anonymized. So you can't do crosstabs on them, right? It's like a big pool of people and that's the results that you get. Each audience member, both control or treatment, because they both receive the polls and you measure the results, most likely only receives one brand lift question. So they will get the recall question, or they'll get the question like, how likely are you to purchase a product, or however you've designed the poll. So they only get one question. The brand lift questions can be served either in Facebook or in Instagram. And the brand lift questions can only be served to people over the age of 18, regardless if you're advertising in a country where it's allowed to, you're allowed to advertise to a younger audience, or if you're just advertising on Instagram and can reach a younger audience. So the other way that you can measure on social, and this is something that we all know by now, is just traditional metrics. So this is not like the brand lift, but this is the traditional metrics that we think about with social. So we can think about how far our reach was, how many post engagements we had, what our post reactions were, our post shares, or our post comments. So this is an example of, we were doing both a brand lift, and then we also looked at our traditional learnings in an immunization campaign in Indonesia. So we combined the two to to have more of a qualitative measurement of our campaign. That was the brand lift, and a quantitative, we looked at how the comments changed over time.
And Sarah, this is Lisa. Maybe I could just ask you to elaborate a little bit more. As many funders, now when we talk about KPIs and we talk about funders asking for you to report on your results, of those 4 or 5 that you list, which ones are the most valuable to follow? Because I think they're not equally weighted. Like what do you need most?
So I pulled out the ones that I think are ones that, instead of looking at reach, that I think if you are going to report, we think of the traditional learnings from traditional social media metrics as more signals, but not actual signs that you've achieved your campaign goals. So these are signals that you might be moving towards the end goal of your campaign, whether or not it's getting donations for something, or maybe it's a behavior change campaign. The traditional social media metrics are a signal, and those signals that we look at are post engagements, post reactions, post shares, and post comments. My favorites are the shares because that's someone actually picking up your content and sharing it. Second would be the post comments.
Great, thank you.
So this is what a brand lift, in comparison to the traditional metrics, this is what a brand lift study results look like. These questions were very customized. If you have a relationship with the Meta as a Meta for Good branch that really works with nonprofits and academic research, if you have a relationship or contact inside of Meta, and or they also have, if you come from an academic institution and are using an email address with an edu, please reach out to me after the fact. I also have the URL you can go to in this deck where you can get support to actually customize brand lift questions. But these questions were customized for UNICEF Indonesia. You can see that we had a recall, which is required in the brand lift. We had a question around motivation, whether or not they were likely to take a child to get immunized during the pandemic, which was the goal of our campaign, to move people to understand that it was safe to continue routine immunization. We had a question around whether or not you would share that information with a friend or a family. And we had a knowledge and a safety question. And you can see this was a very, very successful campaign. When you can see the asterisk means it was the chance of doing this campaign again and seeing a lift like this is 90% or higher. So it's a statistically significant replicable campaign of a 3.5 point lift on safety and a 86 on our shares. So it was really successful. It was a 6-month campaign.
And so just let me put a little more context on that too. The brand lift study that Sarah's sort of showing you, in some ways, Lisa, to your question, that's probably, and Sarah, well, there's probably one other mechanism that would be similar to that, but that's probably the I'm going to say the lowest bar that I think really you can say with confidence whether or not something worked. Everything else really is just metrics that you need to monitor. They're sort of outputs, but not necessarily outcomes. The brand lift studies are sort of the lowest, I'm going to say sort of the lowest hanging fruit for delivering a meaningful, measurable or measured impact that is pretty dependable. As Sarah mentioned, though, unfortunately, you can't pull, it's all completely aggregated and anonymized. So it's kind of a black box, which makes it a little bit challenging if you're an academic and you're trying to publish. But really that is, I think, in some ways, for some of the other work that we've done, we've kind of looked for ways of how do we replicate that, and Sarah's probably about to show you this a little bit, but how do we replicate that sort of core, sort of lowest level, high confidence, impact oriented measurement. But I think brand lifts are really sort of the low hanging fruit way of doing that. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, totally. So that's the brand lift. So we kind of think of that as an in-app way to really ask some questions. Did this campaign work? Now, for those of us that don't have a contact inside of Meta or not an academic institution and also want to know if your content worked, this next section will show you some ways that you can kind of piece together a way to do that without a brand lift. So all of the platforms right now that I list here have an in-app survey tool. So that means you don't have to send people to a third-party tool. And it's a quick way to get a picture of if your campaign works. It's a quick way to ask a quick, like a temperature check around how people are feeling about an issue. It is not a tool that you can use to ask any kind of like in-depth polling or any kind of behavioral research or anything that's over 3 questions long. So, but these tools are primarily free and available and super easy to use. So they are great ways to do some pre-campaign temperature checks and during your campaign. So there's polls available in on Facebook. You can only use polls either in a Facebook group, or if you can use it if you have a video. So if you are advertising with a video or sharing a video, you can do an Instagram. On Instagram, you can do a Instagram story poll. On WhatsApp, you can do a poll to your group, only to your group, or your, in your message to friends. On LinkedIn, you can do a poll. You can do it both in advertising or just organically. And on YouTube, it depends on how large your channel following is. And so all of these survey tools are all temperature checks. That's how I would use them for, with the exception of the Facebook video poll, which I'm going to show you here. This is a sample of how it looks if you if you promote a video using the Facebook ads tool. Then you can add in a little poll. I think it can be up to 3 questions, and they always change it a little bit. It was 4 for a while, and I think that just switched to 3. And it looks right here, after they watched just 10 seconds or the first 5 seconds, it shows up this little poll at the bottom. And we tested this using video polls versus a brand lift. And we were able, because you're able to write any question you want in a Facebook video poll. I haven't had a question flagged. We were actually able to write an intent question. Do you intend to get the COVID-19 vaccine? Totally passed just fine. And we ran head to head both a campaign that was measured by a brand lift and a campaign that was measured by a Facebook video poll. And we were able to, if you know how to use the Facebook advertising platform, you can set it up so you can kind of fake control treatment. There might be a little bit of bleed, so you have to calculate your sample size around that. But we were able to find that we had the exact same results at the same price point. So if you don't have the contacts with inside of Meta, or you're not working in an academic institution, I totally recommend right now using the Facebook video polls as in the same way as using a brand lift. So when Drew talked about using the brand lift tool being the easiest way to measure impact, it's one step above those basic traditional measurements on social. This is your alternative if you want to be able to have some freedom on your question design, or you don't have contacts inside of the Meta. This is
Hey, Sarah, real quick, you were said a couple of things that may have gone over some people's heads. One or passed right by you, but Sarah mentioned the intent question. The reason that's so important is that even within the brand lift studies, we were not able. You're often not able to ask those types of questions because there's some potential concern around. I guess it's kind of maybe HIPAA oriented type of thing. But there's certain questions you just can't ask, even in a brand lift study, if you do have access to it. And so the fact that, we were able to ask an intent question within the poll, in some ways made that even more useful for a particular type of project. But I'll stop there.
Thanks, Drew. And if you have any questions this again is a really tactical presentation. If there's any questions you want to explore something more in depth, feel free to reach out to us via email, and this deck will be available to you with all the links to access all of these tools as well.
Sarah, I'm sorry, can I ask just a follow-up question on this? So when you're introducing the poll, is this also, are you using the targeting tools? So you're targeting a certain demographic
Yes.
to receive the poll? So if that's yes, could you then use it as a pre-post campaign or pre-post intervention? You could do a Facebook video poll at the beginning of a campaign to understand people's decision. For example, do they think they're going to take the COVID vaccine, or and then launch your campaign and do the same poll afterwards and see if there's been a shift? Is that the idea?
You could, so yes, you could do that. I'm not sure if I would use it as a traditional pre-post. I would use it more as a brand lift. So it's a brand lift is delivered throughout the campaign, to just measure between a control and a treatment. If you do it as a pre-post, and this kind of gets a little technical in how the Facebook ads tool works, you're not guaranteed that the same exact audience who answered your pre-campaign is going to answer your post campaign. It's not like the same panel. So there will be just some general
Right.
movement between your audiences.
Right. Okay. Okay. Thank you.
So this is what the Instagram story poll looks like. It's a great tool to use to increase engagement. We find it super effective for younger audiences in the US and in many other countries. I love the story polls. It's my favorite tool to use right now as a communicator. But you can only use one question, but you can make it however you want it. And it's a great way to measure engagement, or even to ask, word choice or diction to inform off-platform messages. This is what the WhatsApp poll looks like. It's great for group engagement and to do temperature checks. And what's awesome is that people can see it live, so it gets really fun. It's a great way to increase engagement, especially I really love using this in group health, like WhatsApp health groups, or WhatsApp groups that involve, we used it a couple months ago for a group that was organizing young women in Nigeria. And it was just awesome to use. It was super fun and engaging. This is what a Twitter poll looks like. I'm sure you've all seen these. Again, I would use this as just a temperature check, or maybe as a point for advocacy. I think it's not really a great measurement tool of anything. And this is what a LinkedIn poll looks like as well. Again, I would use this the same way I would use a Twitter poll. All right, so this is the main way that Drew and I are using social media for research right now. And we use social as a place for survey recruitment. So we use social advertising to move people to a third-party poll platform. And you can choose any poll platform that you use and like. So in academia, that's Qualtrics is kind of the big one. That's a big, heavy, expensive enterprise level survey tool where you can do really complicated surveys. I really like Typeform. You can use SurveyMonkey, any survey tool that you want. And we find that this is the best way to do the type of research that Drew talked about at the beginning. So this is where you can do pre and post research. This is where you can do you can actually build panels, and you can do some really interesting measurement around your campaign using social media as a place where you recruit for your surveys, and then having your survey be off platform. We think it's a really valuable way to do cost-effective, rapid research. And this is the general process. So the characteristics of using social media ads, regardless of what social media platform you're using for off-platform surveys, is that it's really inexpensive. You can use any survey platform that you want. If you are working in countries that have lower bandwidth, I think and also want to have, all the same kind of branching and other tools that are available to you on Qualtrics, I recommend trying Typeform. It's a little more laborious to use if you have to have, your survey translated into a couple languages. It's not as slick and easy as Qualtrics, but it's lighter weight. So I find you get a higher response rate and lower drop-off rate. And you have an ability to recontact your respondents. You can create, because people have gone off platform and given you their email address, and Facebook or whatever platform that you're using sees that people have raised their hand and saying, they've given you information, so you can recontact them using the ads platform. You can, create panels, which is fabulous. You don't run into the issue that Lisa and I were chatting about in doing like pre-post surveys. So using off-platform surveys is great. And there's no survey length limitation, right? I mean, you can create as long as a survey as you want. People may not stick around and answer your 20-question survey, but you can edit your survey. You can do anything you'd like. So the basic steps for you to use is you select your platform. So you figure out where your target audience is and what the penetration levels, to make sure that you are creating a survey that's going to have a statistically significant results. You select your online platform tool. You create your survey. So you do it in Qualtrics or SurveyMonkey or Typeform. You develop your ad creative, and you do not have to be a graphic designer to design the creative to drive people to a survey. It is really simple. At the end of this presentation, I'm going to show you how to do that. You create your ads, you monitor your ads, and you experiment. You try different types of recruitment ads. You play with whether or not you offer incentives. You can offer like a raffle of an Amazon gift card. You can offer, one thing that we've found that works really, really well is data credits. You can vary the amount. You can test till you get the survey respondents that you need according, to how you've designed your sample size. All right, Drew, over to you to talk about how we specifically use social media.
That sounds great. So this section that Sarah's talking about here, a little bit more context behind this. So Sarah and I have been looking at social media, or looking to social media, and working to develop strategies and tap all kinds of different approaches to identify insights to improve campaign performance for many years, and have done just an incredible number of things, including I think we were the first, and potentially, I don't know if anybody ever really quite replicated what we were doing, but using Facebook's API back in the day for tapping into like really, really meaningful, deep insights, kind of social listening oriented stuff. We've done a ton of different things. And I think the thing that both Sarah and I have gotten absolutely most excited about, and to the point where we've actually, with a group of friends and colleagues, including Lisa, who's involved in this with us, have actually even set up a small new little entity to make this stuff happen much more easily. But the basic idea is that is what Sarah said, right? None of it's rocket science. It's very straightforward. But the idea really is that we see it over and over and over, that the organizations we work with, both large and small, just don't have access to really meaningful research. Call it market research, call it behavioral research. Our focus is mostly on behavioral insights and behavioral research. But so we actually literally are setting up an entity to do this with our partners and our I'm going to say our friends throughout the sector. But the approach that we're taking here, I just want to be very clear. We're very open, very transparent. Anybody who wants to do this on their own, we are here to help. This is not, us trying to, we're a little bit, Upswell's always been a little bit weird in the sense that we're not here to try to create something and then do it for everybody. What we would rather do is figure out what works and then help everyone do it. And the same thing goes on the Behavioral Insights Lab. So this thing called the Behavioral Insights Lab really is, in this particular case, is bringing together these strategies that Sarah's talking about in terms of the tactical, using social media to recruit panels. And then in our case, we're using sort of science-based behavioral models to develop different survey instruments. So for instance, we're in the process right now of creating a new research instrument to understand the behavioral drivers and barriers of HPV vaccine in Nigeria prior to the launch of the HPV vaccine in Nigeria. So you can imagine what we're doing there. We're taking the behavioral insight, or the behavioral models. We're using the behavioral models to develop the research instrument, and then we're using these approaches to recruit a panel of people to answer the questions. And I help us identify what are the big barriers and what are the big motivators. In our case, we're looking for both motivation factors and ability factors that will be critical for the rollout of HPV vaccine in Nigeria. So this thing called Behavioral Insights Lab. We're going to be doing everything we can to be as transparent and open so that everyone can replicate what we're doing. But the type of research that we can do with this is, ranges from cross-sectional surveys, pre-post test surveys. Again, that's kind of the more measurement oriented, or M&E oriented, quasi-experimental, again, M&E oriented, panel surveys. All of these things are I'm going to say easy to do, and I believe it. I mean, it is actually quite easy. It's a matter of weeks. Once we have an instrument, we've another example in Bangladesh, similar type of survey that we're working on around HPV also. That one's being designed so that we'll replay it every 3 months to see how things are shifting as the HPV vaccine gets rolled out, both to measure the performance of the campaign, but also to understand how things are shifting as people begin to really become more aware of the HPV vaccine in terms of motivation and ability factors. And each time we rerun it, it's probably a week, maybe 2 weeks to run the entire survey. So you can see this as kind of like, on the one hand, it's sort of, inexpensive and fast. I also, having, Sarah and I have worked with all kinds of researchers and academics and organizations over the years. And one of the, kind of sort of common approaches that organizations use is they'll recruit panels, or they'll work with a research company that has sort of standing panels of people that they go out to, and they'll present stuff to them. And it's kind of an artificial environment and an artificial world that they operate in. Whereas in this case, we're doing the recruitment and the actual instrument directly on the platforms where we're actually treating them as well. So this approach, I think, is very, very interesting. I would say kind of keep an eye out on what we're doing here. And we're going to do everything we can to publish it and share the how we do it, not just the what we do, but also how we do it, so that others can replicate it. I think there might be one more slide here, Sarah. Nope, that's it. Yeah. So, and let us know. And like I said, we're going to be doing everything we can to be as sort of, I'm going to say transparent, but it's more than that. Really, to sort of turn what we're doing into also a sort of a teaching opportunity to show others what we figure out and how we can do it. So ping us if you ever have questions.
Awesome. Thanks, Drew. So now I'm going to go into the ad targeting options, and then I'll explore actually how you build your ads to do survey recruitment using social. So what's great about advertising on social is that it's designed for advertisers to reach their key target audience. So that means that you can recruit from a very specific audience. So you can create what's called a saved audience, and this is where you can manually target an audience based on demographic characteristics like age, location. You can do some interests like musicians that they follow or engage with, or whether or not they engage with outdoor posts or things like that. It's fabulous. That's the basic audience that you can create on the Meta platforms, either Facebook or Instagram. You can do what's called a custom audience on Facebook and Instagram. And these audiences, just as a point, these are the types of audiences that you can do on the Meta tools. So this is Facebook and Instagram. But because Meta came first and built this amazing advertising platform, it's really almost identical to the audiences that you can create, the types of audiences that you can create on Twitter and LinkedIn. So they have different names slightly, but you can do these same audiences. So you have a basic saved audience, that's basic demographic filtering, and its location. Custom audiences, this is where you upload a list, and privacy people, don't get alarmed. All of the data is hashed before it gets to whatever platform you're advertising on here with Meta. So they never get the contact information. They create what's I think of as like a digital footprint of what this person looks like online, and then matches it to see whether or not it's the same footprint or fingerprint that they have in their database. So they will match likely people who match your audience. So if you have a list of donors or a list of people on an email list, you can advertise to them. And then you can use that custom audience to create a lookalike audience. So that's people who look like people on your custom list. If you are doing a video advertising on Facebook or Instagram, what's amazing is that you can create a custom audience of people who watched your video. So this is how you do re-polling to people using video polls and be able to simulate how a brand lift works. So creating that custom audience and then creating a lookalike audience is really helpful to create control and treatment to simulate what a brand lift looks. And if you want more details, I'm not going to go into it today because we're going to run out of time. But if you want more details on that, feel free to email me. So this is where in the ads tool inside of Meta that you can define your audiences. So this is what it looks like to define that saved audience that we talked about with the basic demographics. You can create, you can do it based on their interests, like dog lovers. You can reach out to married women, young adults, sports fans, etc. It's definitely, you can't target based on some sensitive topics, but pretty much everything else is fair game. So think about it as like what a brand would target is something that you can use to think about, and targeting in any country or in any kilometer radius, you can drop a pin and think about it that way. But in order, so when you first create, so you go in, you create your target group, and then you have to create some engaging content to move people to your survey. So these are some examples of the types of content that we've run that have been really successful in driving people to a survey. So we recommend having your advertisements so not to pollute your potential audience with the type of topic you are doing, and kind of pre-selecting to make your research as robust and really neutral as possible. Having your content in your images not be about your research topic. So, and we also recommend, and we found what works the best is really leaning into people's better angels. That just drives people to a survey's tools, their willingness to help or, to be, part of their community, whatever community that they are a part of. So, help your friends, talk about how short the survey is or the exact length. If you are offering an incentive, putting that incentive in your post copy around your survey really matters. Having a clear, bright image. Sometimes having an animated GIF like we did for the one on the left works really well. And I love making the headline of your survey really short, 3 letters, your opinion matters, make an impact in 3 minutes, works great for our ads. This is I worked with Nadia Diamond Smith from UCSF, and we were targeting young women in the United States. So we did a combination of Instagram Reels, and we also did some Facebook posts, but Instagram posts drove a lot. And we found it was great. And again, leaning on people's better angels, having images that look like people. The image on the right, I call her my survey goddess. I don't know what it is about this woman, but I used her as a survey recruitment image in the States, in India, in Indonesia. She is the woman that gets people to fill out a survey. So coming up with, it can be a stock photo, try a whole bunch of different ones. As you can see, the graphic design level here is, you didn't need it. I am not a graphic designer. I created all of these ads. It's super easy. And I'm going to show you a few tools that you can use that are free. And they're, again, these links are all clickable. So we'll send out a PDF of this deck so you can use these. I find if you look in the far right, these images of empowerment, it's a great resource for social good organizations and public health organizations. For stock photos, they are very empowering and free to use. I love to use them for survey recruitment, so that's a great place. And all of these tools are free. Adobe Express is how all of those ads were created. And it literally has templates. You can select where you're advertising and it'll organize everything right for you.
Hey, Sarah.
Yeah.
Actually, go ahead. You might be covering it. I was just thinking one thing and actually go ahead and keep going. You might actually cover it here. Sorry.
So there's a lot of pitfalls that you can run into. We've made all of the mistakes advertising on Facebook and thinking about survey recruitment and thinking about doing any kind of research on social. So the first pitfall that you can hit is your ad campaign can get blocked. So what you can do is, the first reason why a lot of ads get blocked, especially around survey recruitment, is there's a lot of negative comments on your posts, right? Because to advertise, you're actually boosting a post, or you're putting ad dollars behind a post. And there's comments on a post. And if you are offering an incentive or anything like that, you may have people saying in your comments, it's a scam, or you may have people not liking the type of research that you're doing. So make sure that you actively manage comments. Or your ad might be blocked because you have a picture of a woman breastfeeding, or maybe it's your ad is just blocked because of the type of image. So test different images. Try different things to see what works and what can get past the advertising requirements of whatever advertising platform you're using. Test different languages. We found that even if a language is not a traditional language that's on Facebook, so we found that using creating ads that were actually in a local Mayan language in Guatemala actually drove a lot of engagement. And so try different types of languages. Try English if you're recruiting in the Hindi belt of India. Try slang to really drive a lot more conversations and a lot more people into your survey. And be careful what you name your images. I made this horrible mistake. I was testing a whole bunch of images for an academic and doing some survey research, and I actually named the files like handicapped woman, or woman in a wheelchair, or Black family, and that got banned because it looked like I was targeting specific advertisers, even though no one could see what my file name was except for the people that were reviewing ads, but it got banned. So I recommend calling your images like very milquetoast names like image 1 or image 2, and then having a code that what you can do. So The other pitfall that lots of people always ask me about is, how do you stop having duplicate or spam responses? How do you stop people from just re-clicking on your ads and getting more and more of the incentives you're getting? So there's a bunch of different ways to mitigate for that. You can try different ad targeting. So if you're looking at your survey responses and you're seeing that you're getting a bunch of survey responses that have a completion time that just doesn't make sense, change up your targeting a slight bit. That can stop that. It can kind of stop, wherever it's spreading, that can get caught by some people that are just scamming the system. Or use Messenger or WhatsApp to deliver your polls, because with Messenger or WhatsApp, it's tied to a phone number or one account. We use that with the Behavioral Insights Lab. So gets a little more complex. Drew talked about how easy it is. That's what we find. This gets more, you have to be more technically able to customize like a Messenger bot or a WhatsApp bot, but it's great one-to-one. And then make sure your sample size is big enough, and just mitigate for that in the math that you do for sample size. The other pitfall that you can have is on people moving from a social platform to your survey. And this is where you can have a high bounce rate. So for that, update your intro language. Make sure that your disclaimer or your intro about your survey is people are coming from a casual social media platform. So they, talk to their friends, and then all of a sudden they have this big survey disclaimer with all these legalese and scary academic language. They'll run away. So, use emojis, be casual, be fun, and be short. Experiment in different ways, like perhaps put the demographic questions in the front or in the middle. Just try different things and play around. And that's it, except for let's see, we do have a little bit more time. So we can actually go into the Facebook ads tool, or we can just stop now. I know we got really technical, and have some time to answer some questions.
So let me throw one at you.
I know you were going to say something, so please.
Yeah. Let me throw one at you. We talk a little bit about if you're trying creating a panel that is representative of the audience, right? So the process of running ads that you don't end up with a bunch of 55-year-old women only in your survey.
I think I understand your question.
Sorry. So one of the other challenges you can run into is if you're doing survey research, you end up with all of one group of people. Like, you end up with a whole bunch of people in one community, or, sometimes when you're running, we find that you can often get older women to fill out a survey, but young men, 18-year-old men are much harder. And so one of the things that we do in the ads, from the ad side, is there are times where you're seeing that you've got a bunch of one group of people in your survey already. So literally turning off ad sets that are targeting those. So setting up your ads so that they're targeting different groups, so you can ensure that you've got a representative sample that is that looks like the audience you're trying to reach.
Yes. So what I would do there is just create those saved audiences. So you create your audiences in different ad sets. And so you would just have one campaign, an ad set for, if your audience is broad, so, it's people ages 18 to, 65 and above in the United States, I would then create an ad sets for the people that are harder to reach. And those are younger. Typically younger people are more not likely to fill out a survey. So I would definitely do it there.
Yeah, any questions or things people want to discuss?
And Drew and I this is what Drew and I geek out on all day, every day. So we are happy to continue to, talk about the pitfalls that we've had what we've seen work, and the gotcha moments, like Davey images the wrong name for advertisers. So we're happy to riff off of those. But I see, Madhavi, do you have a question?
Yes, I do. This is Madhavi from the Bay Area Global Health Alliance. My question is, how do you go about creating culturally specific content for ads when you're on a budget? For example, if you work at a global health organization in the US and want to reach young mothers in South India, how do you make your content effective and engaging with limited resources?
That is such a great question. And I was going to, hold on, I was going to share my screen because I want to get back to that slide where I have all the different places that you can go. So hold on a second, let me share. So on this, slide, you can see, so the images of empowerment is my favorite place to go to make culturally relevant ads on the cheap. All of the images are free. Oh, Drew, do you want to go ahead?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. Just cleared my throat.
So all of the images are free, and also they are, just as the name of the site suggests, they're images of empowerment. So if you are also thinking about creating images that through a gender lens that don't add to gender stereotypes. So instead of, a male doctor and a female patient, it would be a woman doctor and perhaps a male patient or a female patient. And they're all real. They're not stock photos. It is a treasure trove for everyone on this call. I cannot express enough about how awesome it is, and it's all free. So that is the first place I would go to. And then, so I would do the bottom right of this slide here. And then I would do the top left, Adobe Express. It is all free and it is so easy to use. It makes anyone a graphic designer. You can even animate your images. You can make, easy GIFs, anything you can create new poll buttons. You saw those like awesome poll buttons on my poll example. That was all created using Adobe Express, and it's all free. So there are so many resources out there for people on a limited budget, which I often am.
Yeah, the other thing that we often do is we will go again and try to look for, if let's say we're targeting, young women in India. As you can probably tell from my voice, even though I don't have my camera on right now, that I'm certainly not someone who has a clue of what the culture is, right? What are young women in India likely to want to engage with? So some of the things that we'll also do is just try to understand sort of the cultural component of that. We almost always have a local partner who is engaging with young women, and so we would start there, to be honest. The other thing though is going and looking and identifying in some of those insight tools that Sarah mentioned to find popular popular Instagram accounts or popular Facebook pages and see what type of content is working well on those pages, and then using that to sort of help in sort of us identify what type of content might work well if we're doing something where we don't have a partner that can really kind of tell us what works. And then the other thing is that for this research stuff, Sarah alluded to it, but the survey, what did you call it, got us, right? That one image, there's something about that. Once you identify images that work, you'll find that the pattern there is often replicatable. You'll notice that in some ways we have a couple of variations of her now, right? The one slide before this, we have a woman, I think that one ran in Nigeria. I can't remember where that one ran, but in a way, a little bit different, but it's a young woman. That's a little bit different, but we actually look to sort of replicate patterns that we find. Like, boy, this seems to be working. Can we, do something like this, but different cultural context? Yeah, anyway. Other questions, you guys? And honestly, like Sarah said, we can geek out on this, but for us personally, it's always more fun to answer questions. Our favorite types of trainings are sort of the sort of ask me anything, stump the jump types of things. So please feel free to ask questions. There really are no dumb questions. I mean, once in a while I'll ask a dumb question like the one I did earlier where Sarah said, "What are you talking about?" But other than that, there's really no dumb questions. So feel free to ask anything.
So Drew and Sarah, this is Lisa. I'll just quickly jump in. When you are, say, you're using Facebook as a platform for survey recruitment, and you are developing, so separately, you're developing that questionnaire that you would launch, say, on SurveyMonkey. What, in your experience, is the maximum number of questions, and what is considered to be a robust sample size once you've recruited like your panel?
So the sample size is easy. There's not a robust sample size number. It's dependent on and there's calculations. There's like free sample size calculators out there. I'll put some links in the comments, but you have to do it. It's sample size is relative to your original target audience size. So there's not one blanket sample size audience for each case. So that one's easy to answer. What was your other question, Lisa? I'm sorry.
That being said, though, Sarah, we usually see, I mean, the numbers are usually, this is just totally, like when I think about the research we've done, we'll usually end up with anywhere from 1,000 to 10,000 people, depending on the project and whether or not we're going to go back out multiple times. But I'm always kind of surprised at how small some samples can be and still be statistically significant. But like Sarah said, we know just enough to be dangerous there, and so we'll look to calculators or we'll look to partners, academic partners who are much more knowledgeable than we are.
Qualtrics has a great sample size calculator. So does SurveyMonkey. Like all the main tools that you'll use to create your poll, they all have sample size calculators.
That's really great. Okay, and before we move to Penny, who has a question, just going back, what's the maximum number of questions you think that should be included on a question?
That's a harder question to answer. So I think it's really dependent on, we were able to get, it's really depending on how much time you want to take to keep trying to get to your sample size and how much you're willing to spend in advertising and incentives. But you can literally do as long as you need to get the research that you are done. If you are also willing to play with emojis. I worked with an academic at UCSF, and the way that we were able to get the responses that we needed was really making the questions, it was a very, very long survey, making the questions more fun and having some breaks in them was literally how we solved that problem. Lots of emojis.
And I just have to say, like, just think of how ridiculous that answer is, right? Like how, and really, like, this is the kind of thing I think that you all need to think about, right? I mean, no one thought that Sarah was going to say, the secret is emojis, right? And yet that really is the kind of thinking, right? How do you make your surveys something someone wants to actually do? I mean, to Sarah's point, it's probably limitless, as long as your audience isn't getting sick and tired of it and bouncing, right? But that said, I mean, I think we often will be like 20, like it's just like the number but it's really hard. And Sarah, I know she's thinking this, like, it's really hard to get our partners to let us make the content interesting and fun and engaging, right? But I think I love that answer, Sarah, because I've never heard you say it that way, but it's really funny. It's probably as long as you want if you can play with emojis. Yeah. That's a really, but really what she's saying is, as long as you can, as long as you want them to be, and as long as your audience is willing to put up with it, right? And that might be three questions, or it might be 35 questions. I mean, we have seen some insanely long surveys, and they've gotten done. The other thing that I would say is, when you first start running your audience or your survey, you may find that it's extremely inexpensive, again, to get 60-year-old women. But you're spending $20 a pop for every 18-year-old, man. So it's like depending on the audience and things like that. But I love that answer, Sarah. That's great. Penny, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I'm Penny, social media optimization advisor at PSI, Population Services International. So I work with we work with different programs and help them create for demand creation on various products like SRH, locators. So my question is, we've done a couple of brand lift studies, and what we find out is that we get very good results on brand recall, but on the custom question, we get very poor results, and there's very little statistical significance. So what third-party survey tool would you advise to dig deeper on why, a campaign performs so poorly on the second question?
Sarah, do you want to take that?
So I think that kind of response from a brand lift, so we think of ad recall as being, just do like the minimum that people remember that they saw their ad. So that's awesome. And it's a great first step to dig. And if you're not seeing movement, and if you want to dig deeper about why you aren't seeing movement, I would do a lot of A/B testing to see, where you see comments shifting, or where you're seeing. So that's kind of what I would kind of rethink lightweight ways to play with the campaign. If you wanted to dig deeper into, I don't know, I would look at lightweight ways that you can tweak the campaign a little bit, and then run another quick temperature check. Like I would look at, like if it's a video campaign, I would look at what you could do in video polls, or, like quick, like those quick Facebook group polls or WhatsApp polls. I would look there to kind of change and tweak your content in different ways. I think it's hard to do like off-platform survey recruitment and ask people a really long survey about content that they may or may not have engaged with, and to dig deeper to look at the kinds of things you're doing. I would think about like what are the cheap and easy ways that I can kind of tweak the content a little bit or change my audience a little bit to see better results around my brand lift.
And Penny, it's worth mentioning. So Sarah and I, we have run hundreds of brand lift studies over the last couple of years. And what Sarah's getting at here is that what you're learning in your brand lift, and I'm going to just be completely very blunt with you on this, is that your ads are working in the sense that it's getting to people, they're recalling seeing it, but the content itself is failing to move people in the direction that you want to be moved in. And depending on the results of your brand lift study, I mean, if you find that your baseline, right, so like, the untreated audience was already 90%, to where you want them to be, boy, it's really hard to move the dial. That last 10% is really hard. If your survey said that, if the brand lift study showed that, only 20% were at that baseline where we wanted them to be, and we still failed to move it, then, I mean, honestly, Penny, the creative isn't working. And what we tend to do, our first place is always from a place of creating content that people, it's kind of the sort of the basics of content strategy. And we're happy that we actually have one of our content strategy trainings is up on our website, and you can pop in and take a look at that. But really, it's looking at how do you create really engaging content that's likely to move your audience. And so my gut on that is that, starting to Sarah's point, it really is probably a creative problem, and looking to those core metrics of, are people engaging with the content? Are they sharing it, right? Are they spending time with it? Are they commenting on it? If they aren't doing those things, what we've found over hundreds of BLS brand lift studies is that you're unlikely to move the dial on those things beyond recall. So really kind of going back to the basics. And I'll tell you, like we did a we supported a meta-analysis, or a bunch of organizations ran campaigns. I think PSI was probably one of those, that showed some really interesting impact of ads on COVID vaccine uptake. But I remember as we were going through them, I found myself going, man, if I could just simply pull out all of the creative that never had it, that just from an engagement standpoint wasn't working, I bet we would have seen a massively higher lift on the aggregate BLS. So I think your challenge there is really one of kind of going back to the core of saying, hey, you know, are people engaging with the content? Start there. Where what you can do, I mean, the other side of that coin is coming into it with, I would say, with behavioral insights, understanding what are the behavioral drivers. We did one of our first projects in Nigeria using this new approach that we're using for the Behavioral Insights Lab. Most of the creative, most of the messaging, most of the campaigns that were happening around COVID there were focused on fear and risk communication. And the research that we did very, very quickly and very clearly indicated that it was hope and pleasure. People's, that was why people were going to get vaccinated. People who felt a sense of hope and a sense of pleasure related to getting vaccinated were much more likely to be vaccinated. And so the risk communication strategy just wasn't working. So going into it with those behavioral insights may also support and help you create those more effective messaging. And I know I've been going on a little bit, but Penny, also ping us if you want to just just kind of have a one-on-one, just brainstorm. Ping us, and we're more than happy to just hop on and just bounce ideas around with you. Some of them might be good, some of them won't be. But just if you want just another set of eyes and some just thought processing, drop us a note. We're happy to hop on with you guys. We love PSI. We love you guys.
Great, thank you. Are there any other questions, either in chat or raising your hand? Okay. So Drew and Sarah and overall Upswell team, thank you so much. I know the Alliance is incredibly grateful to have Upswell as a member of the Alliance, especially given all of your expertise and experience across a number of social media platforms and working with so many social impact organizations over the years. I think Madhavi has put a feedback link in the chat if people want to share their ideas and comments about what they want to hear more of. I think for me, having worked in my career at PSI and at Facebook, I think my own learning curve around the use of social media tools has grown exponentially. This is an area that certainly I'm seeing when I begin to look at funders who are looking at trying to drive behavior change campaigns. I think there's a lot more focus now on ensuring that organizations are able to identify insights prior to launching their campaign, understanding communities' motivation and ability to act on a certain behavior. And this is the expertise of really Drew and Sarah in the Behavioral Insights Lab. And I would really encourage all of you across your organizations and your comms organizations, this type of skill set for you internally for your orgs is incredibly valuable. And I think it will only exponentially increase going forward, especially as we begin to see AI introduced now into accelerating the use of chatbots and the use of AI in that space. So I would really encourage all of you to invest in and try to build out the skill set internally within your orgs to use these social media tools that Sarah and Drew have outlined today. I think it's only going to help you and your organization be successful as grantees and also be successful in actually moving the needle for those of you that are really trying to change behavior through your projects. So I really want to thank you so much, Sarah. Thank you so much, Drew. As Drew said, that he has kindly offered to jump on the horn with folks if they need some one-on-one. And we're happy at the Alliance to kind of help triage that in case so that you guys aren't overwhelmed, and happy to provide contact information. But thank you again, both of you. And thanks to all of you on the comp side for joining today. Really look forward to seeing everyone again in our next meeting, and be on the lookout for Madhavi for a follow-up email. And have a great day, everyone. Thank you. Thanks, Drew. Thanks, Sarah.